Today we're going to be taking a look at the Monolith T5 tower, part of the Encore series. I've previously reviewed the B6 from the Encore line, the T6 towers, which are the bigger brothers to these that I'm going to look at right now, and as well as the C6 center. And so what I want to know is, do these live up to the Encore name? I mean, I really liked those previous Encore series, so I want to know if the smaller versions still have the same sound signature. Right now, these are on sale for a crazy deal, 89 bucks. The regular price is 329, so you are saving 240 bucks. And so I want to get this review out quickly in case they decide to change their mind. I don't know. I also want to mention that Monoprice is a channel sponsor. They are the parent company of Monolith. They did send these free for me to review, but I get to say whatever I want, and I'm going to do that anyway. So here we go. First, let's measure these, kind of compare them to the bigger brothers and see what differences we notice. We're also going to listen, of course. And yeah, I just basically want to know if this is something that I could easily recommend at 89 or even at the regular price. So we're going to find out, and we'll go from there. So I should mention that I previously reviewed their most affordable line, which is the Audition series, and those they were decent. They had an issue where the treble was too hot, but luckily they were EQable. And so yeah, I had some mixed feelings about those just because overall they were good, but there was just that treble that was a little too hot. Very easy to EQ out though. My guess is that these will have the same tweeter as the T6 towers, and so if that's the case, I don't expect any issues, but let's find out right now. All right, so here I'm gonna unbox these. In the meantime, while I'm doing this, let me just go over some specs, and then we'll take a look at what the measurements show. Show you real quick what comes in the box. So here you have, some outriggers. So that's very nice. 90 bucks. Look at all this stuff that you get. I'll show you guys how it looks with these on. These are actually the same ones as the T6, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, here's the grill for it. All right, so there it is. All right, so these are packaged really well with this nice foam. It's not that weird styrofoam that just like makes a mess. This is a budget speaker. Look at this nice unboxing experience. It has a bag. Monolith likes to do this with a lot of their stuff here. Comes in this like sleeve here. Okay, so this is the bottom. You kind of like undressing the speaker. All right. So look at that. You have a shiny bottom piece. So this is the bottom. This is where the stuff screws in. Look at these binding posts. Nice shiny bottom. It's kind of a mixed texture, so you have the gloss on the top, but then the just a basic black grain vinyl, of course, and the port here on the bottom. Dual binding posts. So if you guys are into that sort of thing, you can do that. Now I will say that this does look a lot like the Audition series. Look very similar. This definitely looks like the same tweeter from the Audition series, so that tweeter was a little bit hot. Hopefully that's not the case with this. This is definitely the Encore though, because of the gloss top part. And so the Audition series does not have that. The Audition also doesn't have the dual binding post, so yeah, it's kind of weird. This is kind of like a hybrid between the two. I'm not sure, but these drivers, I'm gonna have to look and see if these are the same. So the dust cap is flat here. Yeah, I'm not too sure. But that is a tiny, tiny tweeter. So you can kind of see a little size comparison here. There is the T5 tower. And over here, we have the T6 tower. Now, so obviously the difference in size of the woofer, which I would expect, but look at the tweeter there and look at this tweeter here. An easy way to tell is that this has the 4 screws and that one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So as far as height, the T5 tower is about 5 to 6 inches shorter. All right, and here is a better look at both of them side by side. And the camera is the same distance from both of them. So starting at the bottom, this one doesn't have the outriggers yet. So that adds about maybe a half an inch at most. But there they are. As far as depth, you can kind of see there the difference. Now remember this tweeter. Let me go upstairs and show you the Audition series. So here are the Audition series. Don't mind these things. Those are for the Atmos upfiring speakers that I'm trying out. But notice that the top doesn't have that gloss finish. Still a big port in the back, but single binding post here. These look like they're about the same exact size, but the woofers are different. If you look at the dust cap, they're not flat, but overall the rest of it looks very similar. And definitely that tweeter looks very familiar. So that kind of concerns me because this tweeter was too hot, too much treble by about like 6 dB, pretty high. It was too hot on these, but maybe it'll be different on the Encore series. So I actually brought the Encore T5 up into the living room so I can look at these side by side. On the left is the Audition series. This is the Encore series. And although the tweeter, the actual driver itself, looks like it's the same size, the waveguide is bigger on the Encore series. Also, you can see the difference in the drivers themselves. So I guess they're using different drivers. The Encore T5 doesn't have the outrigger feet yet, and yet it is a little bit taller. So you can see that the enclosure dimensions are slightly larger on the Encore series. Another thing that's noticeable is the Encore T5 is noticeably heavier than the Audition T5 tower. Here they are side by side, and you can actually tell that they're almost exactly the same width. As far as depth, they're nearly identical as well. And looking at the back, other than this gloss piece, the enclosure size is nearly identical. So is the port size if I'm looking at them. But noticeably different is that the Encore has the dual binding posts and this one just has a single. I'm not sure what to attribute the weight difference to. Even just pushing them forward here, you can tell that the Encore is like significantly heavier. So maybe larger magnets on the drivers, maybe more enclosure bracing. I'm not sure. I don't think that their crossover is gonna make that much of a difference in weight. But even without the feet, this is heavier. Maybe this thing is heavy, these two pieces on the top and the bottom. But yeah, I'm not too sure exactly what causes that difference in weight. All right, so I am looking at the initial measurement. Let me see here. Why? So that was what I was worried about. They are using the same tweeter, and that was the one that was too hot. Let me compare these with the Audition series and the Encore T6 to show you what I'm talking about here. So here is the Encore T5 tower that I just measured, and notice that there's a dip here at about 2 kilohertz, assuming that's where the crossover is. And let's say this is about average 89. Up here, it's up maybe about 4 to 5 dB above the reference line, which I'm using as 1 kilohertz. So it does also have a treble rise, which I kind of suspected because it is using that same tweeter. And so here's the Audition T5. So we're just looking at this from here on up, and you'll notice that it looks very similar here. The treble might even be a little bit hotter on the Audition. So in either case, I don't think that this is quite as neutral as the original T6 tower. So let's pull that up here. So here's the Encore T6, the original one. And so you'll notice that, yeah, it just didn't have as much of a treble rise, although it did have a little bit of a bump here. Yeah, yeah. We'll see how that plays out in the listening test. So here I am in my living room, and I've been testing out the Encore T5s compared to the Auditions, and you can see they look very similar still. So I've been using this Duke Audio VU3, and it's cool because they're VU meters, but it's also a way to be able to switch between the two speakers very easily. And here I am pretending to listen, even though I listened to these the other day when everyone was sleeping. And when listening to both of these back to back, the main thing that I noticed is that the Encore is just a little bit more refined sounding. I think that maybe the treble is not just quite as boosted. Also, if I take off this Atmos height speaker, you can see the slight height difference between the two, and that allows the Encore to have a bit more bass, and that's noticeable. A little bit more deep bass extension, not a ton, but enough to make it just sound more tonally balanced compared to the smaller Audition T5. So with the Encore, if I were to move my head slightly this way or this way, the sound changed less than when I were to do the same exact thing with the Audition series. Ah, boo. There they are, out of stock. All right, so in the middle of reviewing these speakers, I just went to look them up to see, what the price was and if they're still on sale for $89 at the time. And they're all sold out, which is kind of to be expected. I did mention these on the Daily Hi-Fi podcast, so I'm not sure what to say. I was going to recommend these speakers with the same caveat as the Audition T5 speakers, which was that they're an excellent value, especially if you're planning on using them with some kind of room correction, or if you plan on EQing them to kind of reduce that treble. But now that they're out of stock, I don't know what to say. So I guess, yeah, I can recommend them if you can find them. And are they worth it at the price, their regular price? It's a little tougher, of course, to recommend them at nearly double the price, but I can still say that what else can you get that's better? I can easily recommend them. It's just tough when you know that they've been on sale for less. So I'm not sure exactly what they're doing over there. It's just, I don't even know how they're making money at $89, including shipping and all that. Anyway, so what do? I guess we'll have to take a look at the bookshelf speakers, and hopefully those don't run out of stock before I finish this video. All right, so this is the Encore B5 bookshelf. Here it is. All right. So this one has a single binding post on the back. Same tweeter. So let's get some quick measurements of the Encore B5. All right, so something I just realized that I didn't realize before is that this is a sealed speaker. The B5 is sealed. So the B6 bookshelf has a port in the back. I went to go measure the port, and yeah, it doesn't have one. Sealed speaker. Interesting. All right, so there's a better look, and you can see what's happening. Still, there's a kind of a suck out here in the crossover region between 1 kilohertz and 2 kilohertz, and the treble is rising. Now, when I take a look at the directivity, as I've said in a previous video, which was on Daily Hi-Fi, the best way for me to understand the directivity is to actually invert it. So by looking at the directivity, this would give me a good idea of what would happen if I corrected the speaker to make it so that the listening window response was flat. This is what would happen to the speaker off axis, and as you can tell, it's very smooth and something that I would look at and say, hey man, that could definitely take well to EQ. Of course, here above 13 kilohertz, it starts to change drastically, and there's a lot more of a treble roll off here. So this is kind of the response that you might expect to see. That's with this red line. If you were to make that flat, that other line is what you might expect the off-axis response to be in your room. So looking at the non-normalized contour plot, you can see that it's very similar in response to the tower speaker. So if I take this response, rotate it, and
I make it a polar response, I get something like this. And if I compare the polar response here of the Encore B5 bookshelf to the T5, you can see the polar patterns about the same. I would say by looking at this around 45 degrees horizontally. It's a little easier if I kind of do this just to give me a better idea. I would say, yeah, around 45 degrees. There is a slight dip here around between 2 and 3 kilohertz. You see it's a little darker. So a graph like this will also help you aim the speaker. If you have these, you may want to stay within this 45-degree range. What I'd like to do is maybe put this on a phone or print it out and put it on top of your speaker. It'll help you aim this to your main listening position. Also gives you an idea where you should aim it relative to the sidewalls if you want to include early reflections from the sidewalls or if you're trying to avoid them. So looking at the frequency response of the sealed speaker, I'm noticing that it starts to really drop off. 90, what's this, around 92. The F3 is around 113 hertz, but the F10 looks to be around 55 hertz. So not a ton of deep bass extension like the B6 bookshelf. That one is ported and it does have some pretty good bass extension for a bookshelf speaker. This one, not so much. You definitely need to use a sub with these. All right, so what I can say about the B5 bookshelf, doesn't have a ton of bass, but it's very EQable. So if you're gonna be using this for a home theater situation where you can use EQ, sure, that's fine. I wouldn't use them by themselves, definitely need to use a sub. And maybe good for surround speakers, something like that. Yeah, maybe some height speakers. I think they might be small enough to do that. But overall, yeah, they are very EQable, just kind of like the Audition series that I previously reviewed. And as far as the T5 Tower, if you can find them, I think they're a great deal, especially at that price, just because those actually have some pretty good deep bass extension because of the 3 drivers and the fact that it's ported with a larger enclosure. So yeah, there's my review of those. So if you want to take a look at my speaker leaderboard, I rank these from highest to lowest in different categories. So that's it for this video. If you liked it, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. That's it. Take care. Bye-bye.